This program, From ObamaCare to Catastrophic Care, a Nonpartisan Analysis of the Health Insurance Debate, was presented January 26, 2020 by Richard A. Mathisen to the Breakfast Forum of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Lehigh Valley.
Healthcare in America, essentially. And I wish you luck in being nonpartisan.
Okay, from Obamacare to Catastrophic Care, a nonpartisan analysis of the health insurance debate, which Frank's not quite sure it'll be, but we'll see. And my name is Richard A. Mathisen, and this is, I think, my 8th time here, so a lot of you know me. And so 2020 is a presidential election year. Is anybody aware of that? And the Democratic presidential candidates compete in primary elections in the spring and summer, and then the general election. And there are very different opinions on health care insurance. And national health insurance will be at the center, or is at the center, of both campaigns, primary and general. ObamaCare, the legislation passed in 2010 by the Democrats and signed there, and called the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act 2010. And that is highly controversial in different ways in the primary election and the general election. There's been a Republican attack on Obamacare from the very beginning. They've been unified from the day it passed without a single Republican vote. They want to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something else which is unspecified. And I call that the attack on Obamacare from the right. But there's also a Democratic attack on Obamacare from the left. And many Democrats are attacking Obamacare because they want to repeal it and replace it with something else, such as Medicare for all. So I call that the attack on Obamacare from the left. The Democratic attack is a little surprising because when it was passed, it was considered a historic achievement by Democrats, fulfilling a long-time party goal. My view is that in many ways, Obamacare is a very impressive achievement. There is much to admire, but there are also certain major problems with it, and we'll be examining those from an analytical point of view. Obamacare can be compared to 5 blind men describing an elephant. Okay? You know, one says it's like a tree trunk or a wall, or it's a sword, you know, for the tusks. Anyway, my opinion, and most of this is just going to be factual, but I think Republicans tend to be blind to Obamacare's strengths, but very aware of its weaknesses. And conversely, Democrats tend to be blind to Obamacare's weaknesses, but very proud of its strengths. So another analogy is the quip about a camel being a horse designed by a committee. And there's a camel, a horse designed by a committee. Many of the best and worst parts of Obamacare trace back to the original political calculations made by President Barack Obama, his assistants, and the Democratic leaders of Congress. So we'll need to look at Obamacare as a campaign issue, but we also need to look at the human side. What happens to the individual or family who does not have health insurance coverage? What risks do they face? And I am going to be saying that the risk they face is the risk of financial catastrophe, the possibility of huge expenses caused by a serious accident or illness without insurance would completely exhaust the financial resources of many families and throw them into bankruptcy. So that's what I call a financial catastrophe. I'm going to focus on catastrophic care because the underlying reason for health insurance is not paying for ordinary experiences like a doctor's visit or a broken arm, but it's for catastrophes, catastrophic expenses that are beyond the ability of most individuals or families to pay. So I use catastrophic care as an illuminating concept that will shed light on the entire issue, I hope. And therefore my outline will be as follows. I'm going to start with the introduction about the concept of catastrophic care, and then have some time for questions and answers, because this group loves that. And I want to, clarify anything about that before going on. Then I'm going to go into ObamaCare and follow that by questions and answers. Then I'm going to do a couple brief things. One is national health insurance in other countries and the Medicare for All proposals with Q&A. And finally, the United States Senate has had a lot of investigation of ObamaCare and its issues and catastrophic care. This is Senator Lamar Alexander and something he calls copper policies, which are catastrophic care policies. That's Senator Lamar Alexander, chair of the Senate Health Committee, and Senator Patty Murray, the ranking Democrat on that committee. And they've had hearings. This is a photo of one of their hearings. I actually went down. They had 4 hearings in 2017 that exhaustively went through the entire problems with ObamaCare and were very interesting. And I was present at one of them. And my friend Barbara saw me on TV. I didn't wave at her, but so anyway, that committee has throughout this period worked in a bipartisan manner. You may find that hard to believe, but it's true. Held 4 major all-day hearings, drafted several bipartisan proposals, and Senator Alexander was very interested in Obama's catastrophic policies, which really exist, although you wouldn't know it from the amount of attention. He calls them copper policies because they're limited to people under age 30. So you can get catastrophic care of a sort in ObamaCare, but only if you're under age 30. So that's my outline. And who am I? I was a corporate manager in insurance from 65 to 1990, 25 years. I was executive director producing a series teaching insurance company employees the principles of insurance. I wrote and edited a book called The Prudential Financial Planning Guide, published by Macmillan in 1985, about financial planning in general. And I have designations like Chartered Life Underwriter, CLU, FLMI, 3 actuarial exams. And I've also posted 4 videos explaining ObamaCare on YouTube. So it's a very familiar subject. My goal is to help people understand. I'm not going to be favoring any political party, although Frank may not necessarily, I don't know. Not favoring any political candidate, not for or against. I'm trying to present facts and analysis and avoid opinions as much as possible. Now, one more thing, and I think this is very interesting. National health insurance is dangerous to both political parties, dangerous to them. It's been especially dangerous to the Democrats because most Democratic plans, such as Medicare for All, threaten huge groups of companies and their employees. There's a lot of jobs at stake in the individual insurance industry, in the group insurance industry, and in the pharmaceutical industry. And that has played an interesting role whenever national health insurance comes up. Here's the brief history. Democrats controlled the House of Representatives every year from 1954 to 1994, 40 years, okay? They lost control from 1994 to 2006. And why did they lose control? One of the reasons was health insurance. Because 1994 was the year when health insurance became a hot issue. This was the year of the Clinton, Hillary, here she is, Hillary Rodham Clinton, back in 1994, had a task force to put together a huge proposal. And that's President Bill Clinton. He was elected in 1992 after 12 years of Republicans, and he set out to have national health insurance. And this is Representative Newt Gingrich and the contract with America, who you can, if you wish, consider the evil genius behind the opposition to national health insurance. And the result was, as I just mentioned, that 40 years of Democratic control changed in 1994 to 12 years of 10 years of Republican control of the House of Representatives. So in 2009, when President Obama and the Democrats worked on a new plan, they were using lessons learned from 1994. And remember I said a camel is a horse designed by a committee? Well, they tried to avoid repeating the same mistakes. They succeeded in passing ObamaCare, which was a historic achievement. But then they lost control of the House of Representatives in 2010, the midterm election, with, again, ObamaCare being one important reason. So that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with national health care, but you just have to understand there are huge pressures. Now there's almost equally great pressures on Republicans, and that's especially from the uninsurables, because Republicans don't have a good answer for securing care for the uninsurables. So this is dangerous to both sides, and I think that's worth keeping in mind. Okay, concept of catastrophic care. Some health events cause financial catastrophe, costs that may exceed $100,000 or more. Repeated open heart surgery, for example. But there are many of these issues, health, heart issues, or heart attacks, the diagnosis of cancer, or diagnosis of diabetes. These all have costs, and some of them are severe, capable of throwing people into bankruptcy if they don't have some form of health coverage. The catastrophes in this lecture are financial catastrophes. Many are also emotional catastrophes, such as a diagnosis of cancer. We all know that. But today, we're dealing with government programs and financial catastrophes. And many healthcare financial catastrophes are unpredictable. You may not know that you might have a heart attack, or a stroke, or a diagnosis of cancer or diabetes. And we all know that. But that's perhaps the main reason that people seek health insurance, to protect them against catastrophes. Overall impact in 1 year. 5% of the population generates 50% of all the health insurance costs. 10% generates 66%. And on the other side, I didn't put it here, but 50% of the population has only 3% of the costs. Okay? In other words, the cost generators are specific people. a small segment each year, but the segment is constantly changing. So, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my cursor. Okay. I take a typical person. You work from age 25 to 64, and then you go on Medicare, right? And a healthy person might have 37 years without any abnormal expenses. But you might also have 1 year with open heart surgery, where you have huge expenses, and perhaps a couple years, and I'm using myself as an example, you have a gallbladder, which I had, and or an ear operation, you know, that are medium catastrophes, I'll call them, or minor catastrophes. So that person for 37 years wouldn't have any huge need for catastrophe insurance, and yet in 1 year or 3 years, they might have huge expenses. So that expensive segment, I remember I said 5% generate 50% of the cost. That 5% is changing from year to year, and you may be in it, you know, some years and not in it in others. But then there's also the people we call uninsurable persons, people who regularly generate large costs in the system, and they're called the uninsurables. Do not confuse them with the uninsureds. Uninsureds are people who can get insurance, and under Obama, everybody can get a health insurance. Uninsureds voluntarily choose not to be insured or can't afford it. But the uninsurables are the people who have health conditions such that if you give them a medical exam, which is what happened prior to ObamaCare, you know, they would be turned down for regular insurance and be put in a high-risk pool. And these people generate a major problem for the insurance companies, and they also generate a major problem for the Republicans, because this is the weakness, maybe almost a fatal weakness, of most Republican attempts to deal with the health insurance issue. So catastrophic insurance is designed to protect against catastrophes, but not the routine expenses. Simplest example is Benjamin Franklin, who invented fire insurance in 1752 down in Philadelphia. There are many people pay premiums, but only a few people, the ones who have a fire, collect on the insurance. Everybody else pays in and gets nothing back except the fact that if they did have a fire, they would be reimbursed. So that's catastrophic insurance. The administrative costs of pure catastrophic insurance are very low because very few claims are processed only when your house burns down. The insurance company has low overhead costs. Premium costs are usually low because they are accumulated and just paid out to the people who need them. Modern homeowners insurance, which is where it's developed, offers added benefits like broken windows or shingles that are damaged, but the real purpose of homeowners insurance is to cover catastrophic damage, or so I would say. But no government legislates homeowners insurance. You're not required to have it. It's your responsibility as a homeowner, or probably because the mortgage company insists on it. Automobile liability insurance, compare this to automobile. Every state requires such insurance, right? That's the insurance card you have to carry around when you're driving. You must be able to reimburse the other drivers if you have an accident, if you cause an accident. This is a big business, right? And insurance companies love this business. You see them on TV all the time, right? Geico, Progressive, State Farm Mutual, Liberty Mutual. The government forces people to buy it, and the companies compete with each other. But some drivers are good drivers, right? And some are pretty good, and some are high risk, right? Especially young males under age 25. They have a terrible record of auto insurance. I was one once upon a time. And I still remember after 2 years of driving, 24 months, I had 22 accidents.
Oh, my God.
21 of them my fault. No insurance company wants to cover them. The combination of testosterone and cars is not a good combination. But maybe I shouldn't have confessed that. But the state demands that the companies must cover them, must cover their share, and at a price set by the state insurance department. So what happens is those poor drivers are put in a high-risk pool, sometimes called assigned risk. And so if a company writes 8% of the policies in Pennsylvania, it has to take 8% of the high-risk pool. Now you might think insurance companies would hate taking those drivers, but they don't. They love it because all their competitor companies have to do it too. So there's no competitive disadvantage. They just charge good drivers more to cover the claims on the high-risk drivers. So why am I talking about automobile liability insurance? Because prior to Obamacare, all individual health insurance was handled in the same way. There were high-risk pools in most states where companies would compete for persons in good health or pretty good health, but also have to take on a share of those who were in poorer health. So that was how the system functioned prior to Obamacare being passed in 2010 and went into effect in 2014. Did those old health insurance high-risk pools work? Well, many people thought they did, others thought they didn't. They did have some well-known problems because there were exclusions in these health policies back then. There were limitations such as a number of years. They'll pay benefits for 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, but then they stop. And there was always a medical examination. So how did Obamacare deal with these problems? Obamacare requires no exclusions, no limitations. It'll pay as long as you're sick. Most surprisingly, no medical exam. Everyone can apply for and receive Obamacare without a medical exam, and they all pay the same premium. The really sick people pay the same premium as the really healthy people. This is Obamacare. Those are the strong points of Obamacare, and I consider them admirable. What are the weaknesses of Obamacare? Such generous policies require high premiums and huge deductibles. We'll be talking about that. Leads me to my second topic, Obamacare. Let me stop here and ask for questions about catastrophic. Frank, and then...
It seems to me the major problem, if you have insurance, you have a big company behind you, they negotiate with hospitals, and they get an amazing markdown. A $20,000 procedure, they'll pay $2,000 for. If you're uninsured, you're stuck for the whole $20,000. That's the reason why a lot of people go bankrupt, is you don't get these enormous markdowns that Medicare does, but also that private insurance companies do.
Yeah. I'm going to give you later on what the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania premium is for Obamacare. But I can tell you right away, it's over $8,000 for a person age 55. It's $8,000 and some dollars a year with a $6,800 deductible. Just as a general comment, the United States has an unusual system because it started out with employers and it still is very much employer-based, and most of the people that have that coverage are generally happy with it. Obamacare covers the people that don't have group insurance, and that's where those two issues need to be kept separate. I think I better get going. Okay, So now on to my second topic, which is Obamacare. Okay, and this was just my outline. Okay, here's health insurance in America in 2014 when Obamacare went into effect. 80% of the population is in group-type plans. And that means employer plans, which are the more than half of everything, Medicare for people over 65, and Medicaid. So all of those are group-type plans where you are forced into it, and they have a mixture of healthy and less healthy. 20% do not have group-type plans, and that's the ones that Obamacare is aimed at. That's called individual insurance. So you have group insurance and individual insurance. I'm going to spend a couple seconds or minutes on this because what happens in America is very, very strange to me. And that is the entire conversation in America is conducted by people with the group type insurance. Okay? Every talking head on television is an employee, right? They're an employee or they're over 65 and have Medicare. I have only heard one commentator in the 10 years of the debate that actually had Obamacare. Everybody talking about it doesn't know what's going on, in my opinion, with the people who have Obamacare. So that's the 80-20. The 80%, most of the population has it, and we're going to have to look at who are in that 20%, because it's mainly entrepreneurs, small business owners, and farmers are one large segment. And then there's all of these people that cycle through it. You know, if you lose your job and have to get Obamacare, then you're part of that, but you're part of it for, you know, a few months or a year, and then you're back into a company.
No, well, yeah, no, I am the perfect example. I have not had a group health insurance for years, and thank God for Obamacare. That's how I get my insurance.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. Now, of the other 20%, that was 63 million in 2014, that don't have group insurance, look at the red, oops. That's the undocumented, okay? Undocumented, that's 13 million, and Obamacare does not cover them. Very, very specific. There's people who think they should be covered, but now, on the other hand, if you're here on a green card, if you're here legally, you are able to be covered by Obamacare. Then, if you subtract out the 13 million from the 63, you leave 50 million who are eligible and presumably should have Obamacare. Before the Obamacare was passed, there were 15 million that had individual insurance and 35 million who were uninsured before that. Okay? So that's where we were prior to then. Here is where we were 3 years later, because this is when I did my second set. 2017, of that 20%, is about 50 million. There were 15 million that had individual insurance. That's increased only to 18 million. Really, the number with individual insurance didn't grow very much at all under Obamacare. And on the other hand, the number with Medicaid increased by another 17 million because Obamacare had the ability for more people to get Medicaid. When you hear that the number of uninsured went down, it's not because more Obamacare policies were sold to individuals, it's because of all those people that were put onto Medicaid. And even today, well, it was 2017, there were 18 million with Obamacare, 10 million on the exchanges, and another 8 million off the exchanges. I'm going to talk about that. But here's the thing, 18 million Obamacare, and there's still another 17 million who choose not to purchase Obamacare. Usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, often because they think it's too expensive. Now, you see the individual type on exchanges. Why are some people buying Obamacare on exchanges and some off? Because the ones that buy it on exchanges are subsidized. They get a subsidy, often a very large subsidy, to buy subsidy from the government. Actually, what happens is the government pays that part of the premium directly to the insurance company, rather than giving it to you and saying you pay it. And the ones who buy it off the exchanges are ones who are paying full price. They're not subsidized. They're going to their broker and buying it, but they get no subsidy. The ones with no subsidy are any individual making more than $50,000 a year, because the subsidies end at 50, or any family making more than $100,000 a year, because there's subsidies up to $90,000. Families making an income of $90,000 can get a pretty huge subsidy. And then there's almost like a cliff, where if you make $90,000, you get a large subsidy. If you make $91,000, boom, you get nothing. This is, so, now, Obamacare policies are sold in the metal tiers called bronze, here we are, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And this next one shows it better. Bronze, the least expensive are bronze, and they cover 60% of all expenses after the deductible. And silver is 70%, gold is 80%, and platinum coverage is 90% after the deductible. So these are called the metal tiers. And so bronze is the least expensive. When I say that Obamacare deductibles are huge, on bronze policies, they were nationwide an average deductible of $5,000 when Obamacare went into effect. A $5,000 deductible is hard for most people with insurance to imagine. I'm talking about the 80% with employer group insurance versus the 20% without. The 80% have deductibles that are usually, well, back when it started, they were usually $200, $500 a year, maybe $1,000 deductible. There were almost no deductibles that reached $2,000. Obamacare, across the board, for the least expensive coverage, has a $5,000 deductible. And I'm going to show you Bethlehem premiums in just a second. But I want to also mention, see that open space at the top that's not filled in? That's, I put there a little color in it, and that's these catastrophic or copper. This is to keep that metal analogy here. That's what the term that Senator Lamar Alexander uses. Copper, and they're usually under age 30 only. So one of the things being advocated in Congress was extending those catastrophic policies to all ages. Right now, they're limited only to people under 30. Why were they limited to people under 30? Because they're the healthy people they're trying to get into the plan. So they're providing incentives to get healthy people in there. But they won't give the same thing to people. I saw a question.
Aren't they also the group that would be least likely to purchase insurance?
And the group the least likely, yeah, they're least likely to purchase insurance because everybody knows young people think they're invulnerable, right? So, yeah, that is very true. And there's also another thing going on here. Obamacare limits the difference between the premiums for older people, they're in their 60s up to 64, because 65 is Medicare. but the difference compared to younger ones can't be more than 3 times. Now, it's actually about 10 times. You know, older people are that much more likely to have health. So instead of 10 times or 7 times, excuse me, Obamacare limits it to 3 times, which means it's effectively overcharging younger people to help pay the premiums of older people. That's a design feature. And of course, there have been, I know the House had a plan that was going to change it from 3 to 1 to 5 to 1 to bring that more in line and lower the premiums for younger people. Yeah, younger people, they don't think they need insurance, and in fact, if you look at that, you know, where a small group of people generate most of the costs, you know, you are likely to get by. If you're younger, you can get away with going bare, as we say, going without insurance. But then you have the risk, and there's always the risk. Did I have other questions here? Okay. So what are the strengths of Obamacare? It covers all essential health benefits, and that's carefully defined, exactly what it covers and what it doesn't cover, but basically it covers everything you'd consider a health. There's no exclusions, there are no limitations on time. They cover preventive health care at first dollar. This is many of those doctor's visits. It's also birth control pills is one controversial thing. Subsidies for over half the population receiving it. And there are no medical exams. And the same premium rate is charged for uninsurables as for people in good health. Now, yeah.
What about out-of-pocket max? I think that's one of the most valuable things.
That's which one?
Out-of-pocket maximums?
Yeah. You're right, there is an out-of-pocket maximum, which is, I think it's now 9,000. It's been increasing each year according to some formula. But yeah, there is that. And I wanted to just stop for a second to talk about lifestyle issues. You know that smokers have higher medical costs, right? There is a provision in Obamacare that has a separate smoker rate. That's really the only distinction. Drinkers, you know, I'm just dealing with, you know, drinkers, excessive drinkers, the drug abusers, and of course I'm not a drinker or a drug abuser or a smoker, but the final category is the people who struggle with their weight, right? I know I'm on a steady tuna fish and salsa diet, and and I know many other people struggle with weight. But the issue is that overweight can be a very strong factor for medical expenses, but there's no, Obamacare treats everybody alike, even if you've had, you know, many cancer operations or heart surgeries. You're going to pay the same premium as somebody else, which is part of why the premium is high, is because Obamacare is very generous. Okay, that's the strengths of Obamacare. What are the weaknesses? High premiums. And here's the weakness, huge deductibles averaging $5,000 per person per year back in 2014. It overcharges younger persons, we've mentioned that. It charges the same premium to uninsurables, and it covers preventive health at first dollar. Now, that's going to take a little bit. The huge deductibles. Here is, to my mind, one of the strangest things ever since Obamacare was passed. you've had these constant attacks by Republicans, right? You've heard that, I'm sure. And they always talk about high premiums. Nobody that I've heard, no Republicans that I've heard, talk about huge deductibles. The huge deductibles are probably the most negative feature, and it's almost like the Republicans are not aware that there are huge deductibles. Why would they not be aware? Because the 80% who do all the talking don't know what's really going on. That's my theory.
I don't understand why number 5 is a negative weakness.
Number 5 is the covers preventive care at first. Good, thank you. Anyway,
That's a segue. Did I do the right job there and give you a second? All right.
Yeah. I paid you, I planted that question. Yeah, it is very interesting because one of the features of Obamacare that is both considered a great advantage, which is how you consider the preventive care, is also one of its biggest disadvantages. If you favor a catastrophic concept, at least as a minimum. And the problem is that Obamacare will not reimburse you for medical expenses till you reach the deductible, right? A high bar, $5,000 a year or whatever it is for bronze spouses. But they'll pay first dollar for a lot of wellness visits. So what it means is, remember Ben Franklin with fire insurance, where the fire insurance company only has to pay a few claims and everybody else is paying but not generating administrative expenses. Obamacare has this huge administrative load of all these small claims. Every time you send paperwork into a company for your birth control pills or for your visit to the doctor or whatever, that generates paperwork, and there have to be people to write the check and cut the check and keep the records. It's a very large expense item. And if you wanted to have catastrophic care coverage that only covered catastrophes, the best thing you could do is get rid of preventive care. I know nobody will agree with that, but that's fine. You know, I'm just telling you the way it looks from this perspective of catastrophic care is you're causing a lot of cost to the system for the preventive care for a lot of small transactions. Does that?
Yeah, I understand the argument, but the counter argument is that if you do preventative care, you can reduce your catastrophic.
How's that a weakness?
Yeah.
That's why I asked that there was a way.
Yeah, and the counter argument from the insurance side, and remember, I've seen all the studies that's been studied over and over again, is preventive care does not lower costs. Preventive care is a good thing. It's a very good thing. We all want to have it. But subsidizing it doesn't change the structure of the costs. It adds a cost without, you know, every once in a while it does get preliminary notification of something that's going on so you can start treating it. But again, I want to keep going here because I'm just about, okay. Here is Obamacare at age 55 in 2014. And you can see that there's an average premium, age 55, and males and females pay the same rates, okay? And that average premium is $4,686. You can see that's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 income. Because the government subsidy in Obamacare is for people from $30,000 up to $50,000 as a single person.
Could you please clarify the 9 and the 4,000, the two of those, please?
I can't.
Could you please clarify, like you have 9,686 and then the cost. Could you please clarify those two numbers?
On top of 4.
On top on the right.
On the right.
The deductible?
No,
There.
yeah.
9,000 cost, far right.
Oh, it's the sum of the two, okay, thanks.
The
Sum of
two
the-
numbers on the right.
You got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, thanks.
This is the cost, so that's the 5,000 or 4,000 line. And then if you have to pay a deductible of $5,000, you add that cost, $4,600 to $9,686, because you're gonna have to pay the premium each year and then pay to the deductible before you get anything back.
Right, thank you, gotcha.
Okay, does that clarify?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can see that there is a government subsidy. Then, if we go to, this is a couple age 55 with 2 children. This is a family policy. Here you have a cost of $12,000 a year. That's $1,000 a month premium. And you have a large government subsidy. It pays the whole premium for people with a $30,000 income and 40. And it's, declining there. But then between 90 and 95, it drops out. And you're paying the entire cost. And the family policy has a $10,000 deductible, $5,000 per person. So you can see the problems that people have when they're faced with Obamacare is very high premiums and very high deductibles.
Just a quick clarification, is the family policy include more than just the 2
The
adults?
10,000 is an average that I calculated by going to 70 different zip codes. Everything is zip code. Now, all premiums are by zip code in Obamacare.
But a family is more than 2 people.
Yeah, it's a family, it's a $10,000, it's $10,000, $5,000 per person. So if all your expenses are with one member of the family, it's only $5,000 effectively.
Okay.
But if they're split among different members, then you would have the 10,000. Let me just get to Bethlehem. This is premiums and deductibles in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania on Obamacare. And I chose age 55, bronze policy, which is the lowest cost, and an income of $50,000, because I wanted to take someone who wasn't getting subsidized, okay? That's the $50,000. Premium averages, this is for I think there's 8 different policies available in Bethlehem. Premium averages $8,880 per year, and the deductibles in Bethlehem on Obamacare average $6,837.50 a year. And I forgot to put a healthsherpa.com. Health, H-E-A-L-T-H, Sherpa, like the Mount Everest guides, S-H-E-R-P-A. Healthsherpa.com, you can go to any zip code in the country. I just chose Bethlehem because that's who I'm presenting to. Because people, when I tell them that the deductibles are so large, people say, oh, that can't be true. And I say, go to the website and find out what they are. That's Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So you can imagine somebody has to pay $8,800 a year with a deductible of $6,800. They're not going to get any money back till they get somewhere around $15,000 that they've paid out a year, every year. Okay, now this is the individual mandate. Oh, this is the Obamacare with the 18 million and the 17 million. Basically, if I want to go to the bottom line is to make Obamacare work well, you have to get more healthy lives in. And to get more healthy lives in, you've got to have some ability to lower the premium. And my suggestion is getting rid of preventive care, which of course flies in the face of what everybody else wants to do. But, okay, outline. Oh, that's what we're going to do just very briefly on what do other countries do. All other industrialized nations have universal health coverage, but they do it in many different ways. And there's 3 different concepts here: the universal health coverage, the single payer, or the socialized medicine. And you can, and I can give you the sources that show you what does Canada do, what does Singapore do, what does Germany do, what does England. England has 4 different plans: England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. They're similar, but they're each different. You can go see what they all do. And universal health coverage, this is the World Health Organization definition. What they think is the best is universal access to services, health services that are of high quality, and then receiving health services does not put people at risk of financial harm. So where does the United States stand? We have universal access. We do. You go into a hospital, no matter how poor you are going to get treated. You're going to have to pay for it, and you may go through bankruptcy paying for it. We have high quality, considered the highest quality, or almost, but it also puts you at the risk. Where the United States falls down, according to this definition, is the risk of harm from using the services. Because you use them, you have to pay for them. And I think it's the primary cause of bankruptcy in the United States is health insurance. Some people challenge that and they say, oh, it's only the second highest. Okay, it's one of the highest causes of bankruptcy is health insurance. So, I see Frank and then Victor.
You know, our mortality and morbidity rates are much poorer, I think, than any other industrial nation. We live shorter lives and shorter healthy lives than England or Germany or France or Sweden.
I think, I don't think it's that much different, but we're not the highest by any means. I know infant mortality in particular is a problem. Here is part of the problem, and this is viewed worldwide, is that if you have your population located in cities, it makes it much cheaper to do medical care. Canada, for example, has a very relatively inexpensive plan, but all of the Canadian population is within about 100 miles of the US border. You know, everything is, and the problem the US has is we're spread out all over the place. You know, you've got whole areas of the West where there's only one hospital, or the South, you know, and once you put a hospital in a monopoly situation, then here is hospital economics, and this I think is going to be helpful. Hospitals lose money on Medicare, okay? They lose money on Medicare patients, and that's a large number. They lose a lot of money on Medicaid, the poor, who are covered by government insurance, but the government dictates, as in Medicare, the government dictates what the hospital, and the hospital has to make that up on all the employer-paid customers, right? They have to overcharge the people with employer insurance to pay for the ones with Medicare and Medicaid. This is the problem with the Medicare for all, is that if you did Medicare for all at the current premium rates, you would bankrupt all the hospitals, or many of the hospitals. Nobody is really talking about these things, and here's my learning anyway. There's a certain air of unreality about the Democratic presidential debate because you know what's coming from the other side in the general election. They are going to go after whatever they think the weak point is. And health insurance is something everybody wants, but then when they see it, they might, well, I don't know. We're getting out of my grade level here, and
Would you disagree
there's
with
no
that?
question that we spend twice as much as almost any other nation. That was in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, and it's because there's a mismatch between our incentives and the healthcare needs. All of the doctors are where? They're in the cities. Where are the people that need coverage? Out in rural areas. You know, I mean, all the money is to be made in the cities, right?
Yeah.
Thank you all, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
guess you managed to be reasonably nonpartisan.